So, welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, here to support you to find peace with food and overcome disordered eating. So, today I have a great episode for you. I'm going to talk all about identity and when your eating disorder has become your identity and how that is really keeping you stuck. And then I'm also going to give you some tips for how to change this, because this is just so important. Often what we do in recovery and with other things we're trying to change in our life is that we do the behaviors, but we don't really step into that new identity of feeling, being, doing, truly embodying what it means to do the new thing, be the new person. So I'm going to be talking all about this and also sharing about how I sort of use this in my own recovery and how I've been now free from bulimia for many years due to this. Well, in part due to this. So let's dive in. So I was in the murky depths of bulimia, grinding maximum willpower to manage an extra day without purging. So it was white knuckling, it was precarious, and I felt like I could fall off the cliff at any moment into one ginormous binge that would set me back for days. But despite this, I knew that I would recover. Somehow, someday, deep in my bones, I sensed it, and I had no clear evidence for it. I had no sensible plan of action or guru to guide and airlift me to safety. In fact, the opposite was true. Days were spent obsessively restricting eating, over-exercising, and then ending up in the supermarket at 4 p.m. buying donuts, toffee crisps, and Doritos. I was spending money that I didn't have on food that would be barely tasted and then stuffed down in milliseconds later to be purged. And I would wake the next morning feeling mortified and ashamed, vowing that I would never ever do this again. Until, of course, I did. How could I possibly know that I would recover? Certainly a degree of fantastical illusion and naivety was present. Now, I was fortunate to have spent the first 16 years of my life in a relatively peaceful place with food. So perhaps this helped. I had clear evidence that this was possible, as it was a genuine memory. And then eating disorders disrupted my life between 17 and 25 years old, and the intuitive eating years felt like a distant dream. And anyone that has ever experienced extreme dieting knows well that you can't easily walk back across the bridge to the land of food peace. Dieting disrupts and changes your mindset. Physiologically and mentally, you're impacted by starvation and diet culture. Now good and bad foods exist. Guilt ripples through your body at the mere thought of something yummy. And fullness, once something that was a normal function of the body, feels downright wrong. So you oscillate between states of overhunger and stuffed beyond measure. Now, I experienced all of these things, but something inside me still knew that recovery was possible. At 23 years old, on a Find Myself trip to Australia, I decided that I would train as an eating disorder therapist on my return to the UK. I wanted to support others and offer them the help that I hadn't received myself. I was idealistic and hopeful, and I was deeply wounded, carrying much unprocessed trauma. And in Australia, I was still bulimic and chaotic. But this therapist's vision was now a beacon of hope on my horizon, a lighthouse blinking and drawing me towards the shore. To help others, I would need to change. And I recognized that I would somehow, someday, need to emerge from bulimia and heal. How would I be able to support others if I was struggling myself? But what I didn't realize in my naive and youthful enthusiasm was that my identity was not tied to having an eating disorder. Now, I'm so thankful for this, and I'm not really sure how I escaped it. This was something that unwittingly and unintendingly saved me. So I understood that I had bulimia, but in my mind, it was always just a temporary state. I was going to recover, and I was going to become a therapist. I believed this wholly in my core. So my identity was focused on fulfillment and purpose. The eating disorder was not me. Yes, I liked being thinner. I enjoyed the sense of control and oblivion I achieved through numbing out through food. Yes, I like the freedom to stuff myself to beyond fullness with desirable foods, with potentially no consequences due to purging. Although the consequences were dominant and real. Sore throats, acid reflux, tiredness, stomach pain, low self-worth, shame, and a deep sense of inadequacy. And my external life mirrored my inner state. I had no boundaries and people pleased to the nth degree. And predictably, I then attracted narcissists, over-controlling bullies, and other people pleasers as I wasn't capable of a healthy and functioning relationship with myself or with others. And I pushed myself to crazy limits and was exhausted and weary. And I was deeply inauthentic as I showed up in the world with a glossy coping front, whilst dangerously spiralling in deep negativity behind closed doors. Now, I'm not shaming myself here. I was doing the best that I could at the time. The eating disorder was a life raft and offered a safe place. But knowing and believing that I would recover did save me. It helped me pursue further roads when many routes had led to dead ends and failure. I kept picking myself up and having another go. And I tried multiple approaches: therapy, coaching, white knuckling it, nutrition, talking to friends, reading books, changing my environment, anything and everything. And I restarted recovery numerous times. Through all of it, my identity was that of someone who would recover, and I believed it to my deepest core. And this is a valuable perspective to take on board, because your identity shapes who you become. And research shows that people who are successful in giving up smoking tend to identify as a non-smoker, whereas if you identify as a smoker, even when you're not smoking, you're more likely to relapse. So it's not uncommon in the eating disorder space that your identity is strongly linked with your eating disorder. And this is particularly understandable if you were diagnosed at a young age or engaged with professional services when young and impressionable. And you may have been given a diagnostic label as a young teen, and the eating disorder may feel like a part of you. It's been around for so long, it feels safe, known, and predictable. You may not like it, but you don't know who you are without it. And you may be into fitness and be labelled as the healthy one. You may be identified in your friend group as the skinny one. And you may have been praised continuously for your body shape, even though you've been internally struggling. You may derive a great deal of comfort and safety from your identity being interwoven with your eating disorder. You may not know who you are without it. And if you relate to this, offer yourself deep kindness and compassion. The eating disorder has likely been a saviour through difficult times, even if holding you back now. But when your identity becomes unhealthily dependent on your eating disorder diagnosis, this can keep you stuck. It can drive you to unwittingly repeat and perpetuate the destructive cycles which feel so familiar. There is little headspace for hobbies or friendship or pleasure apart from food. The real world blurs into the background, and the eating disorder infiltrates into every aspect of your life, dominating and filling every life crevice. So how to begin to rebuild a new identity and let go of the eating disorder? So this can feel daunting and overwhelming. It can feel that a glaring void exists in your personality. You don't know who you are without it. And although recovery may feel daunting, this can also be an exciting exploratory phase of getting to know yourself. It is a phase of self-understanding, appreciating your inner qualities and acknowledging your strengths and personal preferences. Never mind that you don't know them yet. And there is no right or wrong way to go about this. You're in the driving seat of this process and can take it at your own pace. And simply being creative and experimenting is part of the journey. And you might need to slow down, breathe, and create space for reflection and connection with yourself first. So 3 ways to begin to build identity separate from the eating disorder. Number 1, be inspired. Think about people in your life who inspire and emulate qualities that resonate with your deepest core. This will give you an insight into what matters to you and your personal values. You'll be drawn magnetically towards others sharing similar beliefs and principles. And no one person will share your identical values, but you can gain insight into yourself as you reflect on aspects of their character which ring true for you. Now, I was really inspired in my 20s by Deanne Jade, who set up the National Centre for Eating Disorders. I was really inspired by the life coach, Fiona Harold. I was really inspired by Susan Jeffers, who wrote the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I was really inspired by people in personal development who are making a difference. And I really thought, I want that for me too. Number 2, think back to your early life. Think back to when you were 10 or 11 years old, in the time before life deeply conditioned you to be a certain way. So back then, what did you enjoy doing? What brought you authentic joy and happiness? How did you spend your time? Now, if you experienced very early trauma or abuse, then some aspects of your development may be blocked here and you may be discovering yourself for the first time. That's okay. Be patient with yourself. For others, early life, where you cared less about the opinions of others and were more childlike and free, can give clues about your genuine passions and interests. Now, I know for myself, as a child, I loved bossing my sisters around, organising plays, teaching them different things, encouraging them, being creative. And I used to get so much joy from all of that. And, today, I guess I am living out so many of those things in my therapist life. I train counsellors, I create podcasts, I create and write. I do all these things, and these are things that I've really enjoyed doing from very, very young, even if they look slightly different from how they did when I was 10 or 11. Number 3, dare to dream. So consider your life ahead of you and the experiences you might wish to have. What will be important to you as you look back on your life as an old person in many years to come? What are your key values? Now, I know for me, when I sort of think about looking back on my life, for me, just being able to create, support people, teach people, shine as brightly as I can in the world, I guess, to really kind of, tap into my strengths and my gifts and to be able to really help people and change lives. That's what's really important to me. Also, what's really important is making sure that my children are launched into the world and that I have close family relationships. Friendships are also really important to me. Relationships, just overall, really, really important. Health is important to me, but not in an obsessive way. But I love moving my body, keeping fit. I want to be moving well into old age, but that means as well at the moment that I, don't push myself too hard. I kind of, I'm in it for the long game. So those are just a few things that are important to me, but think about what's important to you. Think about when you're on your deathbed and you're looking back. So dare to dream. Put aside the how in creating these experiences and rather allow your imagination and creativity to access possibilities. Because often our mind kind of gets in the way. We start to think about how we're going to do it. It feels impossible. We feel overwhelmed and we just shut the door. But actually, when we start to kind of dream, think about possibilities, it opens our minds to be creative, imaginative, and to explore all the different options. Take baby steps to explore some avenues, putting little pressure on the outcome, but rather seeing the experience as a creative and exciting journey. And it's all a learning process. And the ventures that don't go so well also provide insight into your likes and dislikes and are valuable for self-understanding. So be brave, be bold, and believe in yourself. So it's so normal to struggle with identity as you recover from an eating disorder. So stay firm on the recovery road and know that the journey ahead can be both exhilarating and an adventurous one. Good luck. Okay, thank you so much for being here and for listening to this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. So if you're not following me already on Instagram, do seek me out, the Eating Disorder Therapist _. For further support with your relationship with food, do go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk. And if you enjoyed this podcast, I'll be so grateful if you'd follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.